All right. Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks. We're here on another NBA Monday. I got another very special guest. You know, my favorite guest of all, Beard of Knowledge on Twitter. And you guys may know him by Phil Stiefel from All About the Birds and many other associations. Welcome back to the show, Phil.
What's up, man? How you doing on this snowy Monday?
Woo! It's a cold one, man. I haven't stepped outside very much. I know I mentioned to you, taking the dog out, but we already talked. I don't think he'll like that very much. So.
It's miserable out there. If you're out there, be safe if you're driving. You shouldn't be, but be safe out there.
Very true. Very true. How was your day at work, man? You went into the pizza shop today.
Went in, took deliveries, made a few bucks, and now I'm home ready to do this. And new show that I got on Monday nights at 9:00, Fairway to Heaven, talking all golf. So getting done work early gives me plenty of time to be prepped and ready to go for all these shows.
There you go, man. And I'm glad you pointed out the golf show later tonight. Perfect opportunity for us to plug in Heat Ratio Sports.
That's right.
We're both part of Heat Ratio Sports. We're really trying to get this to take off, man. We're really building a strong team there. And, the hope is that we can work together and really get, our viewership and listenership up here. And just really build a brand. So, shout out to Heat Ratio Sports, Tony Cotillo and the gang. And, this show is presented by Heat Ratio Sports as well. So let's go ahead and get started, man. We're going to dig into some NBA. We got actually a big segment list here today. We're going to get into a bunch of different facets of the NBA. We'll talk a little bit of NFL towards the end. Obviously the big news there is the Super Bowl and the Stafford trade. But Phil, let's jump right into it, man. The All-Star game will be coming up soon. They're talking about, trying to get it in Atlanta. They're worried about a bubble situation, meshing players. Before I get your All-Star starters as of right now, I kind of want to get your feel. How do you feel about them even having an All-Star game?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn. I actually love the NBA All-Star game versus the Pro Bowl, the Major League Baseball All-Star game. I think the NBA All-Star game, I mean, nobody really tries in an All-Star game, but out of all the major sports, basketball players, they try the most. Especially the fourth quarter of the All-Star game for the NBA, they go all out.
Yeah.
So I do thoroughly enjoy watching the game, but on the flip side, is it really smart to have a game? We've already had how many teams have how many games canceled and how many players go on COVID lists. Is it really necessary? And I really don't think it's necessary. You still got to vote and you still got to award the All-Star game, the rights to win that, the voting and all, because there's a lot of money and contracts based off of that. But I don't think the game is necessary to be played at all.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, you look at opportunities to keep players safe. That's just not a smart move. I mean, you're going to bring in, say, let's just look at, the five starters in the Eastern Conference. So you're looking at maybe, I'll go ahead and give you my Eastern Conference starters, and we can just talk about where they're from. You got Trae Young coming from Atlanta. You got Bradley Beal coming from Washington, Kevin Durant from Brooklyn, Giannis from Milwaukee, and Joel Embiid from Philadelphia, not to mention the places that they're traveling when they're going to their away games.
Absolutely.
And you're bringing them into one epicenter of COVID in a metropolitan area where you have to keep these guys in a bubble for a week, whatever the case may be. First of all, how do you get all these guys in, get them tested, make sure they're clean, and do all this within that time frame?
Well, the other aspect of it is there's a lot of rules right now. You can't handshake the other team after a game, and I don't want to get into every detail of rule. But a lot of these NBA players are friends off the court, and they're not allowed to really interact much right now during the season. You're going to put them, whether it's a bubble or not, into a community for 3, 5, 7 days. They're going to be hanging out together. They're going to, and you're bringing in a lot of risk at the front end of that bubble or whatever you're going to do. That it's going to spread. You might end up with 3 or 4 All-Stars not being able to play for 2 weeks after the All-Star game's over. It's not what you want, but there's a real strong possibility. And, we've seen that the NBA players this year, I'm not trying to call them out on it, but there's been a lot of outbreaks. And, we'll get into the Miami Heat later in the show. I mean, look at their team. I think I was doing some research. I think they've only had one player play all their 19 games so far this year because of an outbreak on that team. And that's just one thing. So I think it's not a smart decision at all.
Yeah, because all it takes is one person, and it's not even a player. One person on the coaching staff, that's handling the crew. There's a lot that goes into an NBA game, let alone an NBA All-Star game, All-Star weekend. Are you going to have the 3-point contest? Are you going to have all those other theatrics? I mean, are you going to have performances? I mean, this is because at the end of the day, it's all revenue based. I mean, they want to make some money on the All-Star weekend. That's a big revenue moneymaker. But you're not looking at any fans being there, right? I mean, I don't know about that either. What they, I'm not sure what Georgia's, policy is on having fans in the stands, or if, Atlanta Hawks have had anybody, but just doesn't, I get it. The All-Star, it is a high accolade, and it is money. It's money.
You hit it on the nail there. It's money, and they're going to get fans in the stands as soon as they can because of money.
Yeah.
They're going to do the All-Star game. If they can do the slam dunk contest and have Shaq there grading it, it's all about money.
Yeah, exactly. And you get all these guys in one place. It's exactly how it sounds. It sounds very dangerous. Maybe they'll have vaccines out by then, for everybody. I couldn't tell you on that. And but just doesn't seem like a very good idea at the time being, for now. We could get into the actual starters. I already gave you my Eastern Conference starters. I have Trae Young at the point guard. I've seen a lot of people with Kyrie Irving over him. Understandable. I mean, I get it. Bradley Beal at the shooting guard. I have Kevin Durant at the 3, Giannis at the 4, and of course our guy Joel Embiid at the 5. No one deserves that more than him. Who are you looking at in the Eastern Conference there?
First, I don't even think it's a debate. I think Durant, Embiid, and Giannis, that's a slam dunk. In my opinion, there's no debate on the 3 bigs from the Eastern Conference. Hands down, above and beyond, they're all having amazing seasons.
They're MVP candidates.
They are all MVP candidates. Absolutely. Yeah. On the guards, I wrote down 3 names, and I crossed off Trae Young. And I'm glad I did, because then we have one difference. I think Bradley Beal, I mean, he deserves it. What he's going through in Washington, he's obviously putting up tremendous numbers on a bad team and all. But I went Jaylen Brown as the other guard. Boston, they're still in the thick of things. What are they, the 3rd seed right now in the conference, 4th seed?
Yeah, I think
something like that. Yeah. And Jason Tatum's missed a bunch of time. They've had issues on that team, and he's pretty much carrying that team. So I gave him a slight nod over Trae Young. I think Trae Young will win the vote just because he's more popular. But Jaylen Brown, I think, deserves at least a discussion to be in that starting role there in an All-Star game.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. If there was a guy there, it would be Jaylen Brown. I think he's been the guy for Boston, and he's even filled that void to the point where, maybe once I get a Celtics fan on here, we'll have a discussion about it. Like, who is the guy? Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown? Who's your star guy? In Philadelphia, we used to go back and forth with Ben and Joel. It's Joel. He's the guy. Maybe it's time for them to decide, where they're going with that team. They've been kind of coming back with the same squad, the last couple of seasons. They added Kemba, got rid of Kyrie, whatever the case may be. But they obviously have a core that they're trying to work with there. And those guys are young, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. It's just odd to me. They got like a nice core, but it seems like they're not moving forward. They're not progressing. But I guess it's not that bad when you're getting to the second round of the playoff. I don't know how to kind of measure the Celtics in that sense. But Jaylen Brown, to go back to your point, I think he's the only guy there. I think that what that comes down to is, how much you measure team success into like him and Bradley Beal. With Bradley Beal, I guess I'm looking at the NBA All-Star game as like the one true thing in life where it's all individually, statistically based. I would never, I wouldn't put Beal in the MVP combo, even though his numbers would say so. He's not leading his team to anything. Absolutely. They're the worst team in the NBA. So definitely understand that. Kyrie Irving is the other guy right behind Trae Young.
Kyrie Irving, a lot of the
missed a lot of time.
All-Star game is a popularity amongst the players, amongst the writers and the fans. And Kyrie Irving rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So him getting a starting nod kind of just doesn't seem likely. He'll probably be a reserve if he even would accept it, but knowing him, he'd probably say, "Nah, I don't want it." You know what I mean?
Right. And he missed a lot of time. Personal reasons or not, he hasn't played the full amount of games. That's kind of why I went with Trae Young over him.
Yep.
But just to mention some other guys that I have on is some bench guys. Now, this wouldn't be like I didn't go like the whole 15-man roster, but I did say, obviously our guy Tobias Harris deserves his first nod. He is, when Embiid's out, he's the guy. He stepped up multiple nights, and became the high scorer, hit the game winner against LA. He's making all the strides to get to the next level, and the next level for Tobias is an all-star game.
Yep.
Jaylen Brown was on my list of bench players. Sabonis from the Pacers, man, he's a very talented big man. Very underrated. Him and Malcolm Brogdon. I don't know if you caught that game last night, but Malcolm Brogdon is a monster, man, and it's ridiculous he's not talked about. He's honestly another guy that could be considered for an all-star spot, averaging close to 23 points a game. Kyrie, obviously, I mentioned him. Ben Simmons is, he's having a really low scoring year, but on the defensive end, on a popularity scale, I think he could get into the all-star game. And then Bam Adebayo and James Harden, I believe, will obviously make it.
I had a list of names I was going to ask you. Ben Simmons and James Harden were going to be on that. I think James Harden gets in because of the popularity contest.
Yeah.
Let me throw you two other names of guys that are on – one's on an okay team, one's on an awful team. And they're having great seasons, great breakout seasons. Jeremy Grant from Detroit and Colin Sexton from the Cavaliers.
Who was it?
Sexton from
Colin
the Cavaliers.
Sexton, yeah. I like both of those, man.
Both are having all-star level seasons on teams that aren't getting enough, press.
Right.
So they might not make it because of no one's paying attention. But Jeremy Grant, I mean, he's turned into a hell of a scorer. And I knew that already. He was a long, great defensive player, jack of all trades type guy. But he's really developed his offensive game there in Detroit this year. And I think he at least deserves the conversation of getting that bench role there.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to look at Detroit. And, I mean, the one bright spot is Jeremy Grant. I mean, Blake Griffin's fallen off. They don't got much working for them in Detroit. So, I mean, that's got to be your guy. And he's performed well with all the attention on him. That's those two guys, Colin Sexton. Chris Middleton's another guy that will probably be thrown in there just, by standard, being the other guy in Milwaukee. Western Conference, I believe, is where it gets pretty interesting. And it seems like it does every year. There's just a plethora of point guards in the West. And it gets really tough to choose. I'll give you my starters. I got to give Damian Lillard the benefit of the doubt, man. I wanted to go Steph. There's been a lot of hype about Steph as an MVP candidate. Damian Lillard's putting up similar or better numbers with a Portland team that's doing just about the same thing as the Warriors this year, right in the middle of the pack. So I went with Damian Lillard at the point guard, Luka Doncic at the shooting guard. Luka Doncic, man, he goes under the radar somehow in his third season. He's averaging 27 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. I mean, it's ridiculous. I got LeBron James.
Favorites to win MVP this year, and he's just kind of gone under the radar. The whole Mavericks.
Those are MVP numbers. I mean, it's just the Mavericks team isn't playing up to par. And then I had LeBron at the small forward. This one is a little bit of favoritism. I'll be honest with you. I have Zion. I think he's a popular player. I think he could win. I think he could be a starter just because it's Zion and ESPN wants him on that starting lineup.
That's true. Yeah.
They'll put it down your throat until you make it happen. And then Jokic at the center, obviously. He's having an MVP caliber season. What are you looking at over there in the Western Conference?
Again, you put Luka as your shooting guard. I mean, in the NBA All-Star game, there's no positions really. You know what I mean? Forwards. Luka could be put in as a forward even if you wanted to.
Yeah, small forward, point guard, shooting guard, whatever you want to put him at.
I got two different names. Obviously, LeBron and Jokic, the Joker. Yeah. I mean, they're locks. And my other, I can't put Zion. I actually put Anthony Davis as a starter just because, I mean, it's the 1-2 punch, LeBron and Anthony Davis there in LA. I mean, they are still the number one team in the league, even though the Sixers just beat them. You got to think that they're still the favorite, and it's because of LeBron and Anthony Davis. So I got LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Jokic as my forwards or front court. And then I went, obviously, Dame Lillard. He's my favorite player in the league.
Yeah,
outside of Dame, I love Dame. It is always Dame time. I would literally trade everything other than Joel Embiid to get him here in Philly. Absolutely. And I wrote down Luka, but just like with your Jaylen Brown, Trae Young thing, I had two names and I circled the other name. I did put Steph Curry as a starter. His comeback story this year, I think he's doing great. He's carrying that Golden State team. And I went Dame and Curry as starters, but Luka's a close second there to Curry.
And I mean, that's a good possibility. I mean, that Steph could beat out Luka in the voting. I mean, that's not that's not some wild conclusion there. But yeah, I'll give you some guys I had on my bench as far as the All-Star team in the West. Obviously, I had Steph, Kawhi. Paul George has actually had a really good season so far. I had Anthony Davis. I had Brandon Ingram, Donovan Mitchell. And then an interesting one out of Houston, man, Christian Wood, who has exploded onto the scene, averaging 23 points, 10 rebounds down in Houston. Those are just a couple guys I had there. There's obviously a lot to choose from in the West. There's guys like Devin Booker, just a plethora. Jamal Murray. There's a bunch of guys out there. Did you have any other guys that you had?
You pretty much named every. I had Zion, I had Kawhi, I had Paul George, I had Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Booker.
Yeah, Rudy Gobert is another one.
I pretty much had every name you listed. Christian Wood right there with Jeremy Grant, former process players that have turned into something. I love to see it, man. Love to see those process players turning into something out there.
I do. I really love Christian Wood's game, man. He's really went to Houston and flourished, similar to Grant, like you said. So that's, our Western Conference, Eastern Conference All-Star starters could change by then. We still got a little bit of time, obviously. But these are the players that are cooking right now, man. And they're obviously, familiar names and some new names as well. But these are our guys that are cooking right now, and that's who we would go with as far as if the All-Star game was tomorrow. The next topic I wanted to dig into, obviously we were going to touch some Sixers talk if I got my man Phil here. So the Sixers, last night had a comeback win against a very good Indiana team, a very fundamentally sound Indiana team who has gotten a lot better at scoring the basketball this season. Obviously they didn't have LeVert, they didn't have TJ Warren, we didn't have Joel Embiid. So, you know how that goes with the Sixers these days. The Sixers were able to come back, pull the game out, get the win. Tobias had a huge game. Ben Simmons got up over 20 points. Korkmaz, what the hell, Korkmaz? I'm one that has dissed Korkmaz in the past on Twitter, and he made me eat my words this time. How do we feel just in the big picture? These nights when Embiid, sits out or has back tightness, whatever the case may be, do these performances say more about the Sixers, or does it say more about Joel Embiid's importance to the Sixers? Like, what would be the bigger fiasco here? How bad the Sixers look at times without Embiid, or just the fact that Embiid is just that valuable. You know what I mean? That you're missing that much when he's gone. How do you feel about that?
I really feel it's both. I can't just pick one. Because you're talking about Joel Embiid, one of the 2 or 3 front runners for MVP right now. He's already been an MVP candidate in the past. But this year he is playing at a level that we have never seen. It's the level we all hoped for him to play in. Yeah. And no matter what, when he's 7'2", 285 pounds, whatever it is, he's going to miss games, whether it's load management or a bad back or whatever. You're going to see him miss games. And we've struggled, obviously. Last night was the first time we won without him this year. But again, how many games did he really miss this year? He hasn't missed a whole lot of them. So his team is still learning Doc Rivers' system and how to play Doc Rivers' system. And, they had 4 or 5 games to learn how to play without Joel Embiid. Right. Last night, I think the key to playing without Joel Embiid was shown last night. Obviously we need some pieces at the trade deadline. I don't think we need a Bradley Beal or a James Harden to make a run towards the finals. But you got to have faith in Doc Rivers. And last night proved it. And I was watching it, and I tweeted out a bunch about it last night. Korkmaz, you said, had a great game last night, especially in the fourth quarter. And Heath Stiefel had a great third, fourth quarter, right?
Right.
Under the previous regime, what would the coach do? He was very predictable. You'd pull Joel out after 6 minutes of the game, put him back. He had a rotation set to the minute, and it would never change no matter what it was. Seth Curry, did he even come back in the fourth quarter till the last 30 seconds?
Yeah, free throws.
Did he come back into the last 30 seconds?
Just
because
for
Doc
free
Rivers
throws.
Knew how to make the adjustment. Matisse was playing lights out on defense in that zone scheme that I don't even know the last time the Sixers ran a zone defense. Korkmaz was making shots. He was playing with that once every 10 game confidence that he has. So he left them in there. So the team is learning that they could trust Doc Rivers. And I think as much as it's, Joe Embiid, it's the players on the rest of the players trusting what Doc Rivers is doing. So I really think that's a big key there. And that showed, it wasn't just Tobias Harris last night or Ben Simmons. Yeah. When you have Matisse Thybulle and, Furkan Korkmaz having, top tier level performances like that, it means they're buying into what Doc Rivers says.
Yeah.
Two or three more Embiid-less games, it might even be better. You know what I mean? So they have to learn that still.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Korkmaz, you mentioned Thybulle. How about Thybulle with that and one across the lane, man? I mean, you talk about confidence, and it's like, he gets a couple steals, and then he gets confident on offense. That kind of gets him going. And you mentioned that John Chaney zone, that zone that Doc was running. He even mentioned it in the press conference after, man. That matchup zone is deadly, and that's something we can look to in the future.
How many times did the Sixers in years past – the other team would roll to a zone, and we had no idea what to do about it.
Exactly.
And Brett Brown would never run a zone defense. Last night proved when you're struggling or you got issues, a zone defense sometimes it brings a team together. Outside the X's and O's, but it kind of gets the team working together a little bit and communicating a little bit better.
And you get guys like Thybulle and Ben Simmons with those long arms in the passing lanes. I mean, that's beautiful. Man, how about TJ McConnell? That dude never stops. He was one of my favorites on the Sixers, man. He always brings the energy, but it's so annoying playing against him sometimes, man. He was attached to Tyrese Maxey's hip. But I will say Tyrese Maxey handled himself pretty well. He didn't do anything crazy last night. He wasn't, the 39-point scoring Tyrese Maxey. He's going through his rookie lumps. He's learning. He's taking his playing time where he gets it. And, he's very poised, man. He steps in when he needs to. He always seems to get us, a bucket or two here and there. And he's a ball handler, which is something that we lacked last year. One thing I did want to point out about last night's game as well, something that shouldn't go unnoticed was Ben Simmons towards the end of that second quarter last night really kept the Sixers in the game and didn't allow the Pacers to run away with that thing. I think he got it cut down to maybe 9 or 11 point, deficit at the end of the half with that crazy layup, with the clock running out. But Ben Simmons getting up over 20 points, being aggressive, attacking, and of course on the defensive end as always. But it seems like he's getting more comfortable in Doc's system as well. That's something to notate.
You got to remember, there was no off season. There was no camps really. I mean, what they had 2 weeks of camp before the season started. It takes time to really adjust to a completely different style of basketball.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say about the initial question, missing Joel Embiid, as much as I love Dwight Howard, I love him, especially the move last night, keeping him in that backup role, even though Embiid's out. I thought that was very smart. And he played way better coming off the bench as well. Missing Embiid, I mean, we know on the offensive end, he's the go-to guy in most situations. But on the defensive end, that lane is just wide open. And you saw it last night, a lot of easy layups. Once Malcolm Brogdon was able to get past his initial man, there's nobody there. Tony Bradley obviously isn't that guy, although he did play Sabonis pretty well last night. But, that's the one area that just it blew my mind last night when I figured it out. Maybe you already noticed it, but
I mean, I've been screaming for weeks that when the trade deadline comes, I mean, we can always use more shooters. Everybody talks about another shooter on every team, but my number one concern is the third string center on this team. That backup to backup, for that game.
Or like a swing forward that can play the center position as well. So
and that's a stretch 4/5 is my number 2, need on this team. But you need somebody better than Tony Bradley that could step in. Amir Johnson comes to mind. We had him, and he was okay. But a guy like what he did a few years ago for us as our third center would be where he could play. Or even Kyle Quinn from last year, whatever his first name is. A guy like him, that could sit for 10 straight games, and then when Joel sits, he could start
get a bucket.
And then Howard could come off the bench as he does.
Exactly.
You definitely need to improve that Tony Bradley spot big time on this team.
Because as much as we even talk about Embiid and the rest that he deserves, Howard's getting older too, man. So you can't go out there and throw him in there for 25 plus games, multiple games in a row, 25 plus minutes, I should say, multiple games in a row. So I think you're spot on right there.
What are we, 1-5 or 1-4 or 1-6 without Joel Embiid this year so far?
I think 1-5, yeah.
1-5. So if you continue to go with Bradley and Howard in your center position, the games Joel misses, that's the difference between being the first seat and the second seat, or the first seat and the third seat.
Yeah.
That's the difference between having home court throughout the playoffs or just, for the first round.
Rounds.
And by the time May, June, July comes around, we might have fans in the stands again.
Yeah.
That's a really big key piece right there.
Yeah. It's key. Yeah. You mentioned it. There's been a lot of rumors, JJ Redick reuniting. I even saw one of our guys from Heat Ratio Sports mention, Wayne Ellington, Lonzo Ball, all guys that would add something, obviously, but I think all guys that are not really needed. And, one thing that, and I was working around it, in the, Twitter thread, and I finally got to the realization that, I'm not really willing to give up anybody that's currently part of our rotation. Aside from a guy maybe like Korkmaz or a Tony Bradley, I'm not looking to get rid of Thibault anymore. I'm not looking to get rid of Maxey. I think these guys play key roles into our depth and our lineups. So, I'm looking at those guys like Redick. Maybe you could get Redick for a second round pick or in some change, or maybe you could get Wayne Ellington for a second round pick and some change. Guy like Lonzo Ball, I don't think you're getting him. He's young. He's an asset. You're going to have to give up a little bit to get him. But just in that sense, would you be for any of those type of moves, or are you just because I know myself, I'm set on like a power forward or a big man. I really want that. How would you feel about any of those moves?
I mean, you can always use more shooters. Wayne Ellington, he's another shooter. JJ Redick, there's that nostalgic, feel with him because of his time here, and him and Embiid were buddy and all. But honestly, I'm with you. We need that stretch four. We need to upgrade Mike Scott. I love Mike Scott. But you got to upgrade Mike Scott's rotational spot, and you've got to upgrade, the Tony Bradley spot. Now, after you upgrade those two spots, if you also want to upgrade Korkmaz to a Redick or an Ellington, by all means, that's fine, because we know nights like last night, they're like once every 10, 12 games. Korkmaz, maybe. If I see him miss another easy open floater running through the lane, I don't have any hair, but I'd pull it out if I did. You know what I mean? The guy's. He has his moments, but still, I'll keep him if it means upgrading the other spots. But if we upgrade the other spots, sure, we can upgrade that spot too. I'm okay there.
Exactly.
It's 3 on the list of importance.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm where you are. I as much as fans love Mike Scott, his personality, that's you don't want him in rotation at your 4 spot. You can't win like that. Deep in the playoffs, you need to upgrade that position. Whether it's you get another center that could maybe fill in both of those needs. You know what I mean? You could go that route, a stretch 4, like we said. But I think on priority lists that should be about 3rd or 4th, behind a 3 and D even, or a stretch 4, another backup center like you mentioned. What we'll get into next, we'll keep it moving. The MVP race, man, it's actually a very interesting one. Obviously, we mentioned, you have your normal names in there like LeBron, like KD when he's healthy, Giannis. But then you have the new guys, the guys that are stepping up to the next level, like Embiid. Jokic has been hovering around that next level for a little bit now, and he's there as well. Who would be your, I guess, maybe top 3, top 5 MVP candidates right now?
Well, and as why? Those that follow me that know that I study betting, I'm a bettor. I love to gamble a little bit, small bets, but still bet.
Same.
And I study the lines, and Luka was the front runner MVP on the betting lines to start the year. He's now tied for 4th, and my personal, I know it's a little homerish, but I think Joel Embiid is the MVP right now because of what he does. Most valuable player for your team. You look at the other guys. LeBron is the favorite right now. You have Jokic is the second favorite on the betting sites and all, and Embiid is 3rd. What does you take Jokic out of the equation? They still may be good. LeBron, obviously you take him off the Lakers and they're gonna falter as well, but they still have Anthony Davis who plays at a high MVP level. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I still got to say Embiid, but I look down the list, and it's funny because Luka's 4, Durant is 4, Curry is 5 on the voting odds right now, and then you have Giannis is all the way down to 6, AD 7, Dame 8. So I think right now Embiid or Durant have to be my favorites for MVP.
Yeah, man. You hit the other one right on the head for me as well. KD. I know the Nets, they picked up Harden, they got Kyrie, obviously, but they don't got much else. No. And KD's having one of his best seasons all around.
I think I was on your show at the beginning of the season, and I said, Kevin Durant, it's going to take him 3-4 weeks, a month or two to get back. I was totally wrong there. He came out, just lighten it up from second one and all. And I like Kevin Durant. He's a good player. I've always been a fan of his game. So even when he was on Seattle, that small, tiny, little lanky dude.
Right. I just have, the same feelings about LeBron. It's the same way I felt last year, and it's really not his fault. He just happens to play with Anthony Davis, and you mentioned him. He's right there on the MVP list as well. I just have a hard time giving either one of them when you're playing with another MVP candidate. I just feel like that's not possible. But let me. I feel like people will think I'm hating on LeBron when I say that. I'm not hating on LeBron. I do have him third on my list. I literally have Embiid, KD, LeBron, and then Jokic.
Yep.
But you mentioned all the guys there. My top 5, I have Embiid, KD, LeBron, Jokic, Giannis. A bunch of those guys you mentioned. Luka is still in the race. Damian Lillard's right there. Steph right there. So there's other guys out there. Of course, it's always a discussion. But we just talked about what the Sixers look like without Embiid. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So 1-5 without your MVP candidate, that says a lot, and I'm not sure what it looks like with other teams. I guess the only reason that you would maybe, according to the betting odds, maybe you put Jokic over Embiid right now, just because Jokic has managed to stay healthy more often than Embiid. I think that's one thing that you have to factor in.
We really haven't seen with him what the team is like without him. How important is he? We know Embiid that he's so crucial. Jokic is there. He kind of flies under the radar. But what happens to that team if he's not there? We don't know because he doesn't miss time. So I don't know. I still put Embiid slightly ahead of Jokic.
Yeah, same. So and I think Embiid is getting the I feel like he's getting the most attention right now as well. And you just look at his team in respect to the other teams as well. He's number 1 in the Eastern Conference. You look at the Lakers, they're number 3 in the Western Conference right now. And it means very little right now. Obviously, they're just a few games in between here and there. But you got to take this stuff into account when you're doing these early MVP votings. So that's where we're sitting at as of right now. We'll get to the next segment, of course. Bradley Beal, man. I'm starting to feel, I can't say I'm starting. I've been feeling bad for him for, 2 to 3 years now of just playing in this dysfunctional Washington. And it's almost not even their fault. John Wall's been injured for forever before he was traded this offseason. And it just seems like Bradley Beal's been there by himself. They traded John Wall for Russell Westbrook, who I don't think is a very good fit there. Not sure where Russell Westbrook is a very good fit anymore. I don't know if people really like playing with it. I don't know what's going on with the evolution of Russell Westbrook in the NBA. But I'm starting to feel bad for Bradley Beal. He leads the league in scoring, by a pretty significant margin, about 5 points a game. And he's doing it on the worst team in the league. They're literally sitting at the bottom of the league with the worst record. How do you feel about Beal? Do you feel like there's a chance that he could be moved this season finally? Or is it still going to take some time for this to just kind of build up and flow over?
Well, first, let me address one comment you made while you were introing Bradley Beal there. I don't feel bad for him. He signed that max deal.
He did.
So he knew John Wall was problems with staying healthy. He knew that if they got rid of John Wall, they would have someone else that might be a problem in Russell Westbrook. So I don't feel bad for Bradley Beal at all. He is playing lights out. He's playing his best basketball of an already great career.
Right.
But he has said 100 times he wants to play right there. And management has said 101 times, we're not moving him. Is it a bluff? Is it like a way to drive up, that trade value? I don't know. But, I mean, I would love to see him trade it to see what he does on a better team.
Yeah.
And, I mean, sure, I would love him on the Sixers. But, again, you're going to have to get rid of Ben Simmons and multiple first-round picks and Maxey and Matisse. You're going to have to change mid-season so much to bring in Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
We've already talked about lack of practice and lack of time under Doc. I don't know if it's right there for the Sixers, but I wrote down 4 names of teams that have A, the assets to trade for him, and B, that I would be intrigued to see him play for. The first one, the Pelicans. Could you imagine Beal and Zion side by side? And they have so many first-round picks because of their trade when they got rid of Drew Holiday. And they have under 25, year-old players. They could put together a hell of a package. And could you imagine Bradley Beal and Zion Williamson? That would be must-see TV right there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. I like that one.
If you like that one, the next one, he's a 2-guard, right? Who's one of your favorite point guards? Trae Young. The Hawks. They need that lights-out score, and they have assets. They have a boatload of under 25 talented young up-and-comers.
Yeah.
A Bradley Beal, Trae Young backcourt would be pretty exciting.
And the Hawks are a team that's hovering around, that middle of the pack.
10 and 8, 10 and 9. They're in that 6-8 range. Bradley Beal puts them in that 4 to 6 range, maybe.
Yeah.
It's an intriguing one for me. I also wrote down the Nuggets and the Knicks because the Knicks, they're always trying to, get better and make that big move. They'll trade 80 first-round picks. Who knows? And I actually think he'd look really good on the Nuggets. It would cost them Michael Porter, but I mean, look really good on the Nuggets there.
And to your point, I mean, Michael Porter Jr. hasn't looked as great, to start this season off. So that may be an avenue they would look to. As Denver has kind of got out of the gates, I will say struggling a little bit for what you expect from, a Western Conference finalist. They've struggled a bit, but I like all those teams. Another one I would throw in there, and we could talk about these guys next. The Miami Heat, I think that's another team that has, a lot of young talent that they could flip for a guy like Bradley Beal. At this point, I don't know how likely it would be considering, I would imagine the Wizards would probably want Bam Adebayo in that deal. And if I'm the Heat, I'm not including him in any more deals. I know I feel like he's another guy that's increased his gameplay this year. He's at another level right now. And you look around the East, and it kind of seems like you need a big guy there, especially to play defense. You're looking at Embiid, you're looking at Giannis at the top of the conference. These are 2 monsters in the paint. So, that may eliminate them from the Beal hype. But, a team that's sitting at 7-12 needs a boost to get back in it. Maybe that's an avenue they would explore for a spark to the season a little bit. I mentioned the Miami Heat for a very specific reason. I mentioned the record for a specific reason. Should the Miami Heat fans, should the Miami Heat players, should they be worried about the hole that they've sort of dug themselves to start the gate? Or are they still right there in the mix? All they need, a couple of wins, string them together in a row. How do you feel about the Miami Heat this season?
I would still be scared of the Miami Heat come the end of the season. I mean,
imagine playing them as an 8 seed.
Yeah, but they are 1.5 games out of that 8 seed only. They are only 4 games out of the 3 seed. That's
crazy.
The 3 through the 12 seed is jumbled together. And you got to remember, they're 7-12. That's 19 games. Jimmy Butler's only played 7 games. They've only had one guy play all 19 games. They've been hit harder than most teams with COVID, issues and stuff. And I just can't see a team that's got that much talent being out of it already.
Right.
Jimmy Butler back in there healthy. You get that whole team playing together. They got one of the best and most underappreciated coaches in all of basketball in Spoelstra. I'm not writing them off. They get that 8th or 7th or even 6th seed. I would not want to be that first round opponent playing them. Not at all.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Eric Spoelstra is the one thing that sticks out to me. Obviously, Jimmy Butler as well. These are guys that are leaders, and they're going to guide these guys back to the right path. Get them in the playoffs. I do like what you said. If they come in there as an 8th or 7th seed, just as much as they may not want to play that number 1 or number 2 seed, that number 1 or number 2 seed does not want to play the Eastern Conference champions from last year. So. I know if the Sixers, the Miami Heat is a team that matches up pretty well with the Sixers as far as having somebody that can, at least play with Joel Embiid. Obviously Bam's not better, but he can at least play up to par with him. And, Jimmy Butler, just not a guy that I want to play in Philly. I really don't. I have no interest. It would be I do have interest. It would be very intense and nerve-wracking because I would want to beat him so bad. I don't want to lose to him. But, definitely a scary first-round matchup. Even if the Nets get up to that first seed, or if, whatever the case may be, if the Heat get up to the 7th seed and square off against the Nets or Milwaukee, this is a team you don't want to see, regardless of how they start. It's about how you finish. So,
absolutely.
I think you had a very good point. Jimmy Butler comes back, first game back, 30 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds. So, first game back, they get a dub against the Kings. He looks like he's fine. So, all I would say is they need to stay healthy.
Back there. That'll never come down. I keep him up there. I still miss him on the squad,
They need to stay healthy. I think that's one situation where if somebody did go down, they already got a little bit of issues with Goran Dragic, a couple guys there. If a guy like Bam did go down, that's for any team though. If a guy of that caliber goes down, it could hurt you. But just some minor injury like that, maybe sits Bam for 2-3 weeks, could really drop them down way further. So anything like that, maybe. But other than that, with the team they built together, they have great depth. Even when they were stripped down to their, last few players to play against us, they took us to overtime. So, they aren't some pushover team, and they've been there before. So I wouldn't worry about them too much.
Undervalue Spoelstra as a coach.
Exactly.
I think in basketball, a head coach means so much. A coach that knows his players and knows how to make adjustments. It's so important. And yeah, I don't doubt the Heat making the playoffs at all at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it kind of leads us into our next segment. Before we switch over to Western Conference, we are going to touch on the Jazz a little bit. But, who do you think in this Eastern Conference? It seems like the competition, is just about up in those top 4 to 5 teams there. You may even want to throw the Heat in there. I don't know if they can get all the way back to the first seed. It's possible, of course. But I would say they're a team that, you would consider maybe one of the best in the East. Who do you think can really withhold and withstand, the tribulations of a season and really hold on to that 1 seed in the East? Do you think that the Sixers can do that? Do you think the Nets are eventually going to overcome them? How do you feel? Just gut feeling.
Gut feeling is I think the Sixers can do it because of their defense, not because of their offense. Now, I don't know if you saw the tweet I shared earlier today from SportsCenter. Did you see it about the Nets, since the James Harden trade, have the best offensive rating? If it ended now, it would be of all time at 122 points offensive rating. Best all time. But their defensive rating, 119.9, would be the worst of all time. So my question that I ask myself while I'm preparing for this show is that sustainable? Is having that great offense with that awful, awful defense sustainable? And while I think it can work in a season, I don't know if it's going to work in a playoff series. You know what I mean? If it's sustainable over a best of 7 series.
Right.
So I still think I think it's down neck and neck. It's Sixers and Brooklyn. I don't think anybody else can overtake those 2 teams, barring a catastrophe of an injury or something like that. Right. A huge trade of, Milwaukee went and added Bradley Beal, which isn't a rumor or anything like that. Unless something major crazy changes. It's Brooklyn, it's Philly. 1-2. Yeah. And I think Brooklyn could overtake Philly for the one seat, but I think in a playoff series, that strategy is not going to work over the long haul.
Right. And if we break down, we can break down Philly and Brooklyn. They do square off this upcoming week, I think next Saturday, I believe. But the matchups, gut feeling of Brooklyn and Philly, the matchups just aren't there for the Nets. And I know, everybody keeps talking about the buyout season. They did just pick up a guy in Iman Shumpert who's known for defense, but they need big men help. They picked up Peel or Norvell Peel or whatever. And is that the backup center? For DeAndre Jordan? I don't know. I just look at a series where if they were to go against, I mean, look at what Bam Adebayo did to them in a 2-game stretch, back to back against Miami. Bam Adebayo torched the Brooklyn Nets. And, with all due respect to Bam Adebayo, he's not nearly the offensive talent that Joel Embiid is, or the offensive force, the dominating presence. Look at what Joel Embiid has done. I mean, you look at him against the Lakers, got every single one of their big men in foul trouble. Every single one of them. He took turns on each of them, Marc Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, Anthony Davis, getting 2 fouls each on all of them. And you look at that in a Lakers team that seems like, they would have the guys, right, to guard Embiid. Marc Gasol's giving Embiid fits. AD's supposed to be this great defensive talent. They couldn't touch Embiid. LeBron had to push him in midair, just to stop him from cooking them the whole game.
Can I stop you there? That was an awful play and all. And LeBron should get more criticism for it. But who's not getting criticism for it? Gasol. Gasol pushed him behind, too. Everybody's talking about LeBron pushing him. LeBron and Gasol both need to be
double-teamed him right there. Yeah.
No suspensions, nothing like that.
Yeah, I thought that was very odd, and I pointed it out the other night. These crazy fouls that get called on Dwight Howard. I don't know if it's because of his reputation.
Absolutely.
Now, don't get me wrong. Dwight Howard does do like a lot of dumb shit. I'm not going to hold you there. He commits a lot of dumb fouls, a lot of dumb turnovers. But, a lot of these times where it's like him getting tangled up or, against Detroit when he got his shorts ripped and you give him a technical foul on top of the personal foul. I just looked at this foul that was called on Dwight Howard as a flagrant the other night. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, that's a flagrant one. But LeBron with 2 hands while Embiid's in the midair and Marc Gasol behind him taking his legs out as well. That's a flagrant one as well. When Embiid could have literally broke his tailbone or fractured his back, whatever the case may be.
He's ended our season.
They could have ended our season. Just because LeBron, in all reality, and people can take this and run with it if they want. Embiid was the best player in that game up until that moment. Literally, he was the best player in the game. He's dominating the game, and we can argue for days on that. If whoever wants to argue about that, whatever. When Embiid's on his game, he's a 7'2", 285-pound guy. There's not much you can do with him. He can do what he wants with you when he's on and when he's getting to the free throw line. The only time you can get Embiid out of his game is if you get into his head and the refs aren't giving him calls. You saw that in Boston for a little bit in that 2-game stretch there. But even then, he was still able to overcome that and get that dub. But, that's an interesting one, man. I think that's a good point to bring up as well is, even if the Sixers don't make it out of the East, which obviously there's a good chance that they can't, there's some talented teams out there. It seems like Milwaukee has become this team that is getting slept on, where they're usually the consistent regular season kings, you know what I mean? The last 2 seasons with Giannis and the MVPs and everything. But, as much as the Sixers could possibly knock it out of the East, I think they are the best Eastern Conference team to play against the Lakers. I think they give the best shot in beating the Lakers in all reality. And maybe that's a discussion for another day. But, I'm with you as far as the Eastern Conference. I think the Sixers are in control. What could happen? Aside from injuries, knock on wood, aside from injuries, what could the Sixers do other than get better? You know what I mean? Other than maybe, Danny Green get more consistent shooting the ball. Seth Curry get more consistent. Shake Milton get more comfortable. Tyrese Maxey get more comfortable. Whatever the case may be. Yeah, time in a system. And Doc is putting these guys in places where they like to be. I mean, Tobias Harris. Let's talk about this really quick because I know you are a Tobias lover. You love him even more than you have raised him up higher even than me. I consider myself somebody who loves Tobias. You mentioned him as that Chris Bosh-esque player next to Joel Embiid, similar to what Chris Bosh was to LeBron. Tobias, man, on the defensive end on top of it, had 27 last night. He's playing efficient. He's playing determined. He has his mind made up. He's not indecisive anymore. How are you feeling? I want to give you your moment with Tobias on here.
I can give you all the Tobias offensive stats. How he's in that 20 points, 80% free throw, 50%.
Yeah.
I can give you all those numbers. And people will say, who cares? And just so to preface it, when I'm comparing him to Chris Bosh, I'm comparing him they're not the same style player per se.
Right.
But that third star on a team that everybody sleeps on, that is crucial. Without Chris Bosh, those Heat teams don't make the runs that they do.
Yeah.
Without Tobias Harris, we would not be in first place in the Eastern Conference right now.
Yeah.
You touched on it. His defense, he's not taking the stupid fouls. He's keeping his feet moving the right way. He's not jumping and getting caught off guard. He's rolling and rotating exactly the way he should with Embiid out there and without Embiid out there.
Yeah.
His defensive game, like his offensive game, has exploded under Doc Rivers. But his defensive game, he's not like – if there was a most improved defensive player award, I'd be putting him in that category.
Right.
Because he has played so – he was borderline a liability on defense even last year. And he is not a liability at all. I can't even call out every moment I've seen him go one-on-one with some of the best players on the other team, and he has stopped them and had his hand in their face on every single play. And I love it. I love it.
And when you put him – yeah, man. And the crazy thing is when you put him around guys like Ben Simmons, around guys like Matisse Thybulle, around guys like Joel Embiid, when he can just play serviceable defense, that makes the world of difference. You look at Seth Curry, we're not asking him to go out there and strap up. Right. Just be in front of your man and make him work for it. You're going to have guys on the back end that's going to help you. And you got Danny Green even, he's played great defense this season. I know the shooting's been inconsistent, but on the defensive end, he's been great. But you put a guy like Tobias who can score the ball, maybe was a liability before on the defensive end, now can fill his role serviceably on the defensive end.
He's averaging 1 steal and 1 block a game right now. I don't know what they were last year, but I know they were a lot less than 1 per game averages. That is insane to see from a guy like Tobias.
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned it, just even in the one-on-one situations where against the Lakers, we watched him, go square up with Anthony Davis for, a couple possessions in a row, and he locked him up. He played him physical. He stood straight up, didn't get in the air, nothing, and he played him exactly how you should. Even Sabonis last night had a couple great defensive possessions against a very fundamentally sound Sabonis who plays in the post. He knows his way around the post. And then, Ben Simmons, we know him defensively, but that guy, when he really locks in defensively, you almost feel worried for that person that's handling the ball because he'll push you. He's physical. He's strong, and he's 6'10" with the agility of, a 6'2", point guard quickness wise. Mm-hmm. So this team is rounding off. I won't go off the deep end with the Sixers here, but it seems like every show I almost go off the deep end. Just I won't let you
go off the deep end. But here's a key. How we talk about the odds for MVP race, the odds for title race. Okay.
Yeah.
Before the season started, I placed a bet. I do on my home team. Every sport, I place a bet, small little bet on them winning a title. I don't care if they're the Phillies and the worst team in baseball. I'll place a couple bucks on them winning a title always. So I got the Sixers at 33-1 to win the title. Threw a couple bucks at it. They're now 12-1. Okay, they're now the 3rd or 4th favorite to win the title. They were not even top 15 to start the year. That just shows they've gone from 33 to 12. That in the 12-1. That's a big jump, and that's how the league is starting to view them because people are starting to bet and people are starting to buy in, not just in Philly, but across the NBA, that this is a legit squad that can make some serious danger for other teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, and to that point, one last point before we move on, we'll move to the Western Conference and the Utah Jazz. Doc Rivers, man, Even some Philly guys, over this offseason were discrediting Doc, saying he's washed up, he's lost his way as a coach, getting let go of by the Clippers, whatever, the mutual agreement, whatever that was. Similar to Andy Reid, a guy that, maybe the time was just up in LA, with the Clippers. It was up. And, it just felt like the right time to move on. And you see right now with the Sixers that Doc still knows how to coach. He's obviously a considerable amount better of a coach than Brett Brown. And we've seen that within 19 games here, 21 games, whatever.
Saw it after 3 games.
Yeah. So I mean, just a lot of hate going towards Doc Rivers, and I'm glad we can, kind of clear that up. Even Daryl Morey's name got kind of, dirtied up down there in Houston towards the end of that run there. But once again, it just looks like two guys that, one, know what they're doing, two, whose time just kind of was up in those old places. And you know how that goes. I mean, we see it all the time. Mm-hmm. But, that's one thing that stuck out to me with the Sixers this season. Just the difference that Doc can make, even in a player like Tobias, who's flipped the switch. We'll move to some Western Conference talk. We don't want to stay on the Sixers for an hour, but the Jazz, right? 11-game win streak snapped last night against the Denver Nuggets. Are the Jazz a real contender? Are they somebody that you could look at in the West, up there with a team like the Nuggets and Clippers, who may give LA Lakers a little bit of a scare? How do you feel about the Utah Jazz?
When you gave me the segment list for today and you put the Jazz on there, I was kind of torn on how to handle the topic and approach it, because what has really changed out of their key pieces on the Jazz? They're still led by Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. They're their top two guys. They still got Bogdanovich. They got Jordan Clarkson, who's probably the 6th man of the year at this point, and they got Mike Conley finally on a winning team. But for the most part, that team is Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert.
Right.
So as I was thinking about it and as I was reading up on them and all, I kind of thinking of them in the same light as Milwaukee. Great regular season team, but until they prove it, I cannot say that they are a contender to go one-on-one and push the Lakers to the brink in the conference finals. I need to see it before I could say, yes, it is, because week in and week out, year in and year out, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, they're good, but they're not. They don't take it that next step come playoff time. Right. So
how do you feel about those Shaq comments towards Donovan Mitchell?
I didn't see them.
Oh, really? I'll let you finish your point. I'll let you know after.
I just think Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley are major upgrades on that team. But again, until you see Donovan Mitchell come playoff time, I just can't. I can't say they are definitely contenders yet. They're definitely in contention to be the best record in the NBA, but playoff time is different. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think, to your point, when you look at those matchups, it's like you look at each team down the line. It's, LA Lakers versus the Utah Jazz. Are you taking AD or LeBron, or AD and LeBron, or Donovan Mitchell and Gobert?
Yeah. They might go there up against, AD, but who on the Jazz is going to stop LeBron?
Right. And then you go down the line, the Clippers, Paul George and Kawhi, or Donovan Mitchell and Gobert. Denver Nuggets, Jokic or Donovan Mitchell and Gobert. I mean, you watched it last night when the Jazz squared off against the Denver Nuggets. When it came down to that matchup in which, people always try to throw Rudy Gobert up there in that top center conversation. He got demolished by Nikola Jokic last night. I mean, Jokic had 47 points. Gobert, like center. Mind you, Jokic is a supreme talent. That's, we're not trying to say that Gobert sucks, but I think he's not as good as people like to hold him to. But that maybe that's a combo for another day. But I just look at matchups and the Jazz don't scare me. You know what I mean? Like if I'm, they just don't scare me. Even as a Sixers fan, they don't really scare me. As far as their star power, whether it's Donovan Mitchell hasn't reached his ceiling yet, whatever the case may be, I just don't see it yet. And like you said,
has hit his ceiling personally. So I don't know what Shaq said about him, but I think Donovan Mitchell has hit his ceiling. I think he.
You think so? Yeah. So maybe that is, and that's kind of what Shaq was. He was like, "You're good." He's like, "But you haven't made any improvements."
Yeah.
And he said that straight up to him, and then Donovan Mitchell went down the course of, I accept that. Like, I'm just going to work every day to get better, blah, blah, blah. But, they made a big fuss about Shaq saying that to him, and it's kind of like, well, why do you even need to say that after he got a win and they're on an 11-game win streak? But, you know how Shaq is. He's one of the best all time, and he holds people accountable.
Shit up over there.
Yeah, they know how to get it fired up, right? So yeah, man. I like you said, I got to see it to believe it. And similar to the Bucks now, I think we gave the Bucks almost too much credit in previous years. Winning those regular season games, Giannis winning the MVPs, because until we see it, we can't believe it. And you see it firsthand with the Bucks. They've gotten knocked out, first round. They've gotten knocked out second round. I mean, these guys, we got to watch these guys learn how to win. And we'll see next. This upcoming postseason with the Jazz. They look great right now. They're a defensively focused team, which I think is always good. Always gives you a chance. Mm-hmm. But even if they were to run into a team like Portland, are we 100% sure that they could beat Portland? As we would say with a Denver Nuggets or a Clippers or a Lakers team, we think, going into that series, I would expect them to beat Portland.
Yeah.
The Jazz, I think Damian Lillard has the capability that he could take over that series and beat the Jazz. That's just kind of how I feel about them. They don't have the star power.
Donovan hasn't taken it to that Dame level yet.
Exactly.
I don't know. I haven't seen enough to think he can take that next step. But, Dame can carry a team for weeks on end. Can Donovan Mitchell do that? I don't know. I just don't see it.
Not sure, man. I'm not sure. You got to see it to believe it. I definitely they at least have caught my attention to where, if the Jazz are playing, I might take a peek and see what they're doing there. If they're playing the Lakers one night, see how they match up. But, nothing over the top just yet. I'm not completely sold.
No.
So we're kind of finishing up here. We'll kind of fly through these next 3 segments. Obviously, as I do every week with each person I get on here, and of course, Phil is my very special guest. He's always on my show. I love having Phil on.
My head
got to get your top.
Every time you pump me up, my head gets bigger, man. I gotta get a new size on my fitted hat here,
I got to get your top 5, Phil. And if you want to give me, we talked about this before the show. So if you want to give me your top 5 best players in the league right now, and then your top 5 favorite to watch.
Yeah. So because he Scotty's like, yo, give me your top 5 players, and I'm like,
what do you mean?
My number 2 favorite player is Dame Lillard, but I can't put him as the number 2 player in the league right now.
Right.
So,
right.
I had to get some clarification there. He's like, well, we'll do both. So my top 5 players in the league, I will say LeBron is the number 1 player in the league till someone proves him wrong. I know we get tired of LeBron, but the guy's in every single finals for how many years in a row? He just hasn't slowed down. He's playing better ball this year than he did last year. So, the guy's 36 and
it seems like his 3-point shot is just getting better and better at later age. It's weird, man. I mean, he puts the work in, obviously.
LeBron's the number 1 player in the league, in my opinion. I think Giannis is, even though he hasn't proven it in the playoffs, I still think Giannis is the number 2 player in the league. And I'll stay with that too. And Kevin Durant, 3. I think Joel Embiid is actually the 4th best player in the league right now. And I'll go Joker at 5, and I'll put Dame at 6. I'll add the 6 just so I could say Dame's name a little bit there. But on the flip side of the equation, favorite players, Embiid 1, Dame 2. LeBron actually is my 3rd favorite player in this league because I love winning, and he wins. So Durant 4, Giannis 5. But that's my name. That's my list there.
I like it, man. Got the consistent names there, but you threw a few in there. Honestly, had Damian Lillard in his top 5, which I thought was very interesting. I can see where you could have that perception. I really can. He's that type of player. Steph Curry's another guy that gets mentioned in the top 5 talents. I'll give you mine. I say every week. Mine changes weekly as I watch him play.
I had Kawhi listed as maybe, a Davis as a maybe, a Luka, a Harden. There's lots of maybes, but yeah.
Man, there's a lot. It would be easier with the top 10, I would say.
Yeah.
But that's why I do the top, so you have to leave some guys off that list. I'll give you mine. I got LeBron at number 1, just like you said. Until somebody knocks him off, we can't say anybody's better than LeBron. That's for sure. KD at number 2 for me. I do like his scoring ability over Giannis. If you need a bucket, KD can go out and get you that bucket crunch time. Giannis is number 3. I teeter back and forth between him and Joel. I love what Giannis does all around the court, passing, facilitating, defense, and of course dominating the paint. Joel Embiid has shown me, and obviously we've seen glimpses of this in the previous season, but it seems like he's finally putting it together. When he's healthy, he's unstoppable. And I'm not sure there's too much pick over him. If I need a bucket at the end of the game, he's going to get to the foul line, do something. He can hit a 3-pointer. He can do whatever you need him to do as a 7'2" guy. So getting up there to that point where hearing back at number 3 and 4 with Jonathan and Embiid right here, both guys that dominate defense. It's interesting. And number 5 is complicated for me because Teeter right there, guys, Damian, James Harden. Of course, AD is another guy I like to have in there, but Kawhi Leonard is until further notice as well. I feel like he does deserve that respect in the top 5. Just the presence he is on defense and offense, what he does for the Clippers or any team that he's ever been on, But yeah, that would round out my top 5 right there with Kawhi Leonard. Of course, some of the guys I mentioned there are obviously in consideration. Jokic is another guy that's right there. Luka, like you mentioned. So this league is full of endless guys.
There's some great talent in the NBA right now.
It's not like the NFL where you got quarterbacks and it's that clear top 5 that it seems like. The NBA, you can make cases for a lot of these guys once the LeBron and KDs of the world. You can make cases for guys. So it is an interesting topic. I mentioned the NFL. Quarterbacks. Got a huge matchup coming up this weekend. Obviously, it's the Super Bowl. We got to talk about it a little bit here. We got the Bucs and the Kansas City Chiefs. I would be honest with you, right before the playoffs, and you know this because I had you on the show before the NFL season, I wasn't a huge believer in the Bucs, but right before we got to the playoff, I did place a small bet there for the Bucs to win the Super Bowl for $3 with a payout of like $30, something nothing crazy, but you see the formula that they were putting together there. They have weapons and they have a very defensive line, so they can score when they need to. The one concern there is, you saw it against Green Bay, was Tom Brady and those shots downfield. At this point, you got to just start playing conservative if you're just lofting the ball up there like that. I can't play like that, but because if he does that against the Chiefs, it's a wrap. But I want to get your, maybe if you don't want to give your Super Bowl picks here, I don't know what shows you got scheduled the rest of the week, but I wanted to get your feel for the Super Bowl this weekend.
I don't want to give my Super Bowl pick because I haven't figured it out yet. That's the problem, because I keep teetering. We prep for the All About the Bird show. I prep all week for the main All About the Bird show every Wednesday night, 9:15. Right. Don't forget to tune in, everybody. Yeah, I like to plug, where I can.
There we go.
I'm literally trying to figure out where my betting mind is, because where my betting mind is where my prediction's going to go. And I want to pick the Chiefs. I want to pick them to even cover the spread and the over even. But every time I go to click a bet, I pull back. And I'm like, but it's Tom Brady and the Buccaneers team, like you said, they're really good. And they're playing really well at this point. They have some holes, but so do the Chiefs and all. And at this point, if I had to place a bet right now, I'd be leaning on the Buccaneers to win the game, to at least cover the spread, but to probably win the game. Fisher, the offensive lineman, the tackle for the Chiefs, losing him is huge. Patrick Mahomes has already been banged up a little bit. Their offensive line was already banged up, and losing their best offensive lineman in that game last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago, it's a big deal. And I don't think people are thinking about that enough. So those things probably, if I was forced under gun right now to make a pick, I'm probably picking the Buccaneers. And I actually think I think the over-under was 56.5 today. I think I would even take the under. I'm looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 24, 30 to 21. I really think that's probably where I'm leaning right now, with the Buccaneers walking away with another Tom Brady Super Bowl title.
Yeah, and it's crazy, how it works out for Tom Brady.
That's not my prediction yet. Not my official prediction, because
I got you. I will go on the record. I'm gonna roll with the Bucs. I'll just stick true to my original pick before the playoffs started. But obviously, I know Kansas City can win this game. But for the same reasons you hit on there, That defensive line for the Bucks has controlled offenses this entire league. They have one of the best rushing defenses. For a team in Kansas City who doesn't run the ball that well, they have great play calling. They call the runs at the right time. But Tampa Bay has a great run defense. Pass defense is shaky, but they have a great defensive line. You saw them do it to Aaron Rodgers twice this season. You get on the ground more than 4 times. So that's a prestige defensive line coming in there, and they're to make some noise against highly renowned City offense. The one concern for me, obvious, is that Kansas City has a plethora of speed and weapons. Between Tyreek, Robinson, all the guys they got out there, Kelsey, teams that they draw up. Somehow they always get guys wide open, and you saw it last week with Travis Kelsey. I mean, this guy, he's the best tight end in the league, and he's running around on the field wide open. How does this happen? I mean,
he's bigger than Joel Embiid, and he's wide open all the time.
Don't get it, man. I mean, you saw the one end zone, the touchdown from Mahomes. I mean, he lofted it. Travis Kelsey was by himself. And then you throw in guys like McCole Hardman who can take these sweeps and take them to the house. You got Tyreek Hill who can take any reception to the house. So Kansas City, they have game breakers, and regardless of the offensive line, they usually have pretty good schemes.
Number one game breaker they have. I just told you every reason you did for the Buccaneers, but then as you're talking again, I'm already flipping my idea because there's the best quarterback in football in Patrick Mahomes, who may go down with more Super Bowl victories than Tom Brady when it's all said and done. So we keep talking about the Buccaneers, but then you got Patrick Mahomes, the best player in football right now.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you there. Kansas City, they're just a powerhouse, and they seem like a team that always finds a way to win. So the defense isn't very highly renowned, but they make plays when they need to. And Patrick Mahomes, he might be the best player in the league. He might be one of the best leaders in the league as well. And of course, this all-star coaching staff, somehow they get to keep Eric Bieniemy every season. They just get to keep their offensive coordinator that's winning Super Bowls and taking them to the AFC championships. While our offensive coordinator got poached the first season, whatever. But they are just a powerhouse, and it'll be interesting to see that game play out. Somehow I just feel like Tom Brady is going to do Tom Brady things, and that defense of the Bucs is going to be a play or two that really just changes the game. But we'll see. The ruling's out on this one. I feel you there. I may switch my pick by the end of the week. Well, who knows? One final piece here. This one could be pretty quick. Who won the trade? How do you feel about that Stafford trade?
I think it's insane to think that the Rams, since they drafted Jared Goff, will not have another first-round draft pick till 2025, 2024, something like that.
Yeah,
because they gave up so much to get Goff, and now they just traded away even more to get rid of Goff. I think the biggest winner in the draft isn't the teams. I think it's Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, the two wide receivers for the Rams, because Goff was an okay quarterback. I think he gets a lot of hate, and he's a little unnecessary. He did go to a Super Bowl in 2018.
Right.
So, he's not as bad as people say, and he was hurt in the playoffs this year. He was thrown with it. Most times he wouldn't even have played in the playoffs, but because they had nobody else, he was forced into action this year in the playoffs. But Sam Bradford with Sean McVay and those wide receivers and Taylor Higbee, that tight end, I mean, the offensive game that they're going to have there next year, it's going to be unstoppable. So I think the wide receivers and Matt Stafford's a winner for getting out of Detroit, which is, you guys all know Jason Sullivan, a fantasy guy. He's from Detroit, and he loves his Lions. And he's actually happy that they got rid of Matt Stafford because he loves Matt Stafford. He wants to see him do well somewhere. So, I guess that all just said the Rams win, but, without saying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine the Lions winning, anything. But, I think it's a trade that, I mean, I think, the ruling's out on the Rams just yet. in hindsight, we may look at it differently, but right now I think both teams kind of got what they want. Mm-hmm. You know, the Lions got 2 first-round draft picks, a third-rounder. You get a quarterback that come in and start automatically. He is a former first, number 1 overall draft pick. So he can come in and start. And, I was watching, I can't remember, it was one of the ESPN shows today, talking about Jared Goff's contract structure. Basically, the Lions can get out of him, without any dead cap hits in 2 seasons. So 2 seasons, see what Goff's got in Detroit. And if you hate him, get him the hell out. So the Lions
draft somebody in the second round, try to develop him. If he doesn't develop, you still got Goff there. And you can draft somebody else next. Who knows, Yeah,
exactly. So I think both teams get what they want. The Rams are looking at it right now as their defense, number 1 defense in the league. You got some weapons there. You got a decent running game. You got a great offensive system. Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, these guys are in their prime right now. Go out and get I think that's what they're doing, and that's what they've been doing the last couple of seasons. It's not really new. One last thing I'll ask you, how does that change, does it all, if the Eagles were to move on from Wentz and try to trade him? Does it change anything at all? Do you could be looking at a similar situation with having to give up picks to get rid of Wentz?
Yeah, I think it's setting a precedent there, the giving up the picks to get rid of Wentz. And
right.
I don't know
I would have never thought before
are willing to do that or not. We're still up in the air after all the Sirianni press conferences and his time on WIP today. We really have no clue where he's leaning with the Wentz-Hurts discussion. Yeah. But I don't think Wentz, Garoppolo, I don't think any other quarterbacks get moved until Deshaun Watson gets moved. Then once the Deshaun Watson market is set, then we'll see all the other dominoes fall. And I think Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Jared Goff still, even after his bad season. So maybe you don't have to give up as much or as many picks to get rid of him, but you're going to have to give up something to have a team take them from us. So hopefully it's just more pick swaps. We'll give up a pick for your pick and stuff like that. But it's going to be really tough to move Carson Wentz with that contract.
Yeah. I think if you're being realistic, if you look at the numbers, Daniel Jeremiah came out and said the perception of Wentz is a lot different, with NFL rather than, the national media. And I believe it to an extent. There has to be some concern there with Wentz. And at the end of the day, the other team has full control in that. So, if Wentz comes out and says, I'm not trying to play here anymore, I'm done with the toxicity, you know what I mean? I want out of here. And if that happens, we lose any leeway, any that we had in this situation. We're going to be, looking to move him as well as picks in order to get him out. And that's not something I look forward to, man. I really don't. That's the last thing we need. But that's where we're at. But man, thank you again, Phil, for coming on the show. We'll end it there. Of course, with some Eagles talk, it always creeps its way back in.
Guys, get a guy that hosts a show called All About the Birds. There's always going to be some Eagles talk mixed in there.
And you have to, man. That's the struggle that I've been facing, starting this NBA show is like, I at least have to have one segment about the Six, if not 2 to 3. So that's kind of the conundrum here. But thank you again for coming on, Phil. Everybody be sure to go give Phil a follow at Beard of Knowledge. He's got it written right on the screen there for you. Made it nice and easy for me. Also, be sure to check him out on All About the Birds. Be sure to check out the new golf show on Heat Ratio Sports. If you want to go ahead and plug that show in when you guys are going to come on tonight,
it's called Fairway to Heaven. It's live on the Heat Ratio networks, but also on the Heat Ratio, YouTube page, which you should all be subscribing to anyway. It's Monday nights, 9 p.m. We talk golf. We center it around fantasy golf, which is everybody talks fantasy football, fantasy basketball. Fantasy golf is a great way to make money. I tripled the money I invested into fantasy and gambling last week. So, all the money combined, I tripled it. So, pay attention to the show. There's a lot of great information. We throw some golf stories in there. We'll try to we've only done 2 shows. Tonight's episode 3. So we're going to try to make it a little fun as well. But Fairway to Heaven, Heat Ratio Networks, 9 p.m. on Mondays. Obviously, All About the Birds is Wednesdays at 9:15.
There you guys go. Be sure to go catch Phil on all of his shows.
I only got 2 shows right now.
He's a busy man.
More regular shows.
That's a little slow for you.
I got 2.
Be sure to check that show out, guys. That'll be a fun one. Of course, it's always fun over at Heat Ratio Sports. And of course, be sure to follow my page at Scotty Drowned on Twitter. That's the personal page. At ST Philly Sports 1. That's the sports page. Always appreciate the follow. Interacting with the listeners and just trying to get a feel of what's going on out here. How are people feeling about the sports? What's going on? And of course, be sure to subscribe to the Talks Philly Sports page on YouTube. That's the most important part here. As well as the Ratio Sports page. That's where you're going to find all my compadres over there. Compadres, whatever. I think I messed that one up.
What was that?
All mine goes over on the Heat Ratio Sports site. So be sure to go subscribe at the end of this show as well, guys. Appreciate you, Phil. That's going to be it for this episode. Always got to mess up once before I go off, right?